Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our new moon that is happening this Friday, July 5th. It's going to be at 12:57 p.m. in Hawaii and 3:57 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. The new moon is happening at the very end of Gemini and the star of Punarvasu. And Punarvasu is a star that bridges Gemini and Cancer. And we're going to see our planet starting to trickle into Cancer right after the new moon, particularly the moon itself, which often happens because it moves so quickly, but also Venus. So Venus has joined our new moon, and then she's going to move on the 6th, same as the moon itself, into Cancer, where Mercury already is. So we have this energy of this new cycle really bringing the bridge from Gemini to Cancer, from the mind, from our capacity to take in our ideas and really try something different and step out of our comfort zone into the realm of the heart and our feelings, and that energy of the mother, of unconditional love, and really nurturing ourselves and other people. So we're going to dive into this, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because there's a lot to look at. And one day I'll figure out how to side screen. It just doesn't seem to work out for me. We have our moon and sun and Venus here. You can see at the time of the new moon in Punarvasu. Punarvasu is ruled by Aditi, who's the universal mother. And this star is a star of repeating patterns, returning to where we've already been before. It's often translated as return of the light. And it comes right after Ardra, which we've discussed in our previous videos, which has this sort of intense storm energy. And if you think of all the calamity that occurs there, and then the new birth and the new morning, the new dawn of light is this Punarvasu, where we have this universal mother bringing light to all of us, Aditi. It also is very reflective of like fractals. If you look at things in nature that have, a certain design, and then you can see the design on a bigger scale, and it gets bigger and bigger. This idea is really shown with this star, where everything that happens is kind of a microcosm of something bigger that's going on. And we see ourselves repeating these patterns again and again and coming back to this place that we feel like, I've already been here before. But the truth is that it's a little bit different. We're not exactly the same as we were before. We have learned something. Even if some of us feel like we're really slow learners, we have learned something, and it's a little bit different each time we get there. And so our goal here is to kind of think of it more as like a spiral than a circle, where each time we are kind of coming to another outer level of where we've been before, and not to think of it in that sort of linear sense of like we're trying to get somewhere, but just that each time we come around, something different has occurred. It's not like a merry-go-round. It's not exactly the same every time. And so this star is it's actually really a star that feels refreshing in many ways and pulls us from that mind into our heart, as I was saying before. And we're really going to see this with the planets as they move, because the next day the moon moves immediately in, and later that same day, you can see Venus here is really late degrees, even just an hour after the time of the new moon. Venus is also here, joined Mercury in Cancer. And this is really important for the rest of our month, because the sun, the ruler, well, let's start with the fact that the ruler of Gemini, where the new moon is taking place, was already in Cancer. And then the sun is remaining until the 16th in Gemini. But having Venus and Mercury in Cancer is going to make a really big effect on our relationships. Venus, Mercury, and the moon are pretty much the planets we relate to other people with. Mercury is where we're talking, we're communicating, or not communicating. Venus is our actual indicator of relationships. And the moon is where we go deep with people. So when we have intimate relationships or people that we know really well, this is our innermost, most vulnerable self. Now, she, of course, is in her own sign only for a few days. The moon is always moving, right? Where she never stays somewhere for very long. But the fact that she moves into her own sign right away sort of grounds us in this Cancerian energy. And Venus and Mercury don't actually do as well in Cancer. They actually struggle a little bit, because the moon is the part of us that loves our children or our partner or somebody with so much unconditional love that really we're not looking for immediate return on our investment, right? It's just we give and we give and we give. And that's the beauty and the magic of Cancer and the moon, is this never ending fountain of give, particularly in the star of Pushya, which you can see Venus hasn't quite moved there at this time, but the moon has already moved in just an hour after, an hour after let's see what happened here. Not an hour after she moved in, but she moved in really quickly. And right after Venus moves in, and she's already in Pushya. And Mercury is also still in Pushya, even though he's been in this location a little longer. And that's the star of nourishment. It's where we really see the indication of like a mother feeding her child, just giving that well of milk. And that's just what she does. She just keeps feeding her child. The child doesn't give anything in return. She just keeps giving it milk. And that's how it grows. And that's how it gets what it needs. And so, Jupiter is exalted here. This is a place where Jupiter does really well because our wisdom can be flowing like that. If you've ever had a powerful teacher, they're giving you the wisdom because it's just the thing they want to do. It's not really that they get anything from it. It's just the pouring out of knowledge and wisdom is like the sweet nectar of the mother's milk. But with Venus and Mercury, there's more give and take, right? We don't actually want to just give and give and give in our relationships and not receive anything in return. It needs to be reciprocal. And as well with our communication, So they have two separate problems that occur. With Venus, the problem is we act like mothers when we're actually lovers, or, maybe not lovers, but in some sort of relation that requires reciprocity. And then we feel sad about it. We feel like, oh, I gave and I gave and I gave, and nobody gave me back in return. And what's up with that? Why am I not getting back in return? And it's because people don't necessarily mimic our behavior towards them. Some people do, but it's very specifically a specific type of person that does that. More often than not, when we give and give and give and give, we don't actually get back in return. That's not actually the way to get your needs met, right? The way to get your needs met is to use really good communication skills. And this is where Mercury comes in. And this is why it's so important that it's coming on the heels of this new moon in Gemini, because technically the cycle is starting off in Gemini and the sun is still there holding that court for, like 10 more days. Well, 11 more days from the new moon itself. So the idea that the way we communicate is very important is a big part of this, a big part of this puzzle. But yet the ruler already being in Cancer during the new moon, and then Venus coming in and joining in the moon, means that our communication's not actually that good right now. In Cancer, we tend to communicate from a place of this desire to connect. We want so badly to feel good. We want so badly to feel connective that we share our words in a way that can, actually be a downfall to our connection. Because if we're overly emotional, yet we're not using clear language to describe our emotions, instead we're sort of acting out our emotions, people usually don't respond that well, right? It can look like blame underneath the surface. It can look like just getting very weepy and not really being clear about why. It can just be very confusing. It can be difficult for somebody to understand what it is you actually need and what you're actually feeling, as opposed to, that you're somehow blaming them, or, there's just something so wrong, there's nothing that can be done. Or worse, you're not even expressing any of your discontent at all. And you're just kind of continuing to give and say all the things because you just want the connection so bad that you're ignoring your own and dismissing your own feelings. One of the things that's going to make this tricky is this Mars reflection. And, Mars is at 26 degrees. Mercury's moving in towards more of a direct line from this one-way four-house drishti that Mars gives. Venus and the moon, the moon moves quickly, so the moon will be there in a moment. I do my weekly stars reports, and so for next week, from the 8th, to the 14th, we'll see that the moon is right away getting that reflection from Mars. Mercury will be getting it soon, Venus a little bit longer. But that reflection is very, and actually Mars will be moving, Mars will be moving into Taurus as well. So we can go ahead and just see, just to make it easier to look. So there we have the moon. I'm just going to do by hours. Okay, so now we have our Mars drishti on the moon here. You know, exactly on the moon, and it's at like 1:57 Pacific time on the 8th and 1:57 in the afternoon. Mars is really bringing up a level of like that passive aggressive energy that can happen because there's some anger, right? We're trying to individuate ourselves, be strong, be courageous, and do what we need to do in Mars. And yet we might be feeling some disconnect or like our needs aren't fully getting met in our relationships. And so we have this Mars drishti that sort of activates a little bit of anger for us, but yet Mercury is not able to communicate it very well. And Venus is feeling bereft, but not really sure why or how, how to fix it without just continuing to give more. So this can come up, particularly when the moon is getting that direct drishti. We'll see that. Now, I think that Mars is going to move out before Mercury actually gets too close, because look on the 11th. So this is about the closest we're probably going to get is, I think Mars is going to be already gone by then, but maybe I can get it to the time where we can see the end of Mars. Pretty close. Mars is at 29, Mercury's at 21. It's never like a direct line of contact, but we do see that Mercury moves closer and closer into that line of sight from Mars, where we're feeling, we're just feeling a little bit angry. And part of the problem too is that Mars is receiving drishti from Saturn retrograde, kind of all the responsibilities we have, all the things that are slowing down and stacking up for us. And the fears that build up and are pent up within us are reflecting on the Mars. Mars is trying to act and Saturn's kind of slowing it down. And then all of that is being reflected upon our sort of weepy, unconditionally loving relational planets that really want something in return and just aren't asking for their needs to get met. So all of this can create a little bit of a cluster, and then, like I said, Mars is going to move into Taurus and that drishti won't be happening anymore. But the sun will then be moving into Cancer, and we'll really have this strong energy coming in. And so the whole of the cycle, the reason why I point out these things that are happening after the actual new moon itself is because the new moon is a cycle. It's beginning something, and it's beginning a cycle in this case that has already begun, right? It's somehow I'm not at the right time. Oh, because I'm at AM. It's beginning a cycle that has already begun, right? This is the sun has been in Gemini, and Venus and Mercury were in Gemini. We've had a lot of energy in Gemini already. So we've been working with our mind, and when Mercury was in Gemini, our communication was probably very good, but everything was just in this curious field of like, let's take in more information, let's have fun, let's be playful, and let's share knowledge. And as soon as Mercury moved into Cancer, the communication started to get a little more sticky, right? It starts to get a little more clingy and a little more like, my words aren't exactly clear, but I love you. Or, this kind of, Cancerian energy where we have so much love to give, but we also can have a really hard time with separation. And then Venus moving in really clinches that. So we can see that we're needing to also activate within ourselves, beyond our relationships, our capacity to take all that curiosity, all that information, all the different things we see, and really land them in our heart and really find peace for ourselves, because that's the essence of Cancer beyond anything with other people. Particularly when the moon comes into her own sign, it's like an opportunity to feel our feelings and to be like, oh yeah, these are my feelings. And for all of us, no matter what house it is, because for some people, like Sagittarius, it's the 8th house. Aquarius, it's the 6th house. Leo, it's the 12th house. So for some of these signs, it's a Drishtana house. It's a difficult house. The feelings, the emotions, that's not the place that's the easiest for them. And when she's in her own sign, when the moon moves into her own sign, she's meeting that. It's the 6th and the 6th, it's the 8th and the 8th, it's the 12th and the 12th. And so they have this opportunity to kind of step in front of the struggle with the 6th house, or the fear with the 8th house, or the loss and the disappointment that comes up with the 12th house, and meet it to mitigate it. This is the power of those Dushtana yogas, these Viparit Raj yogas. And then for the rest of us, where it doesn't necessarily fall in such a difficult house, maybe it falls in a neutral house, maybe it falls in a blessed house, it's stabilizing that energy for us. The moon is kind of one of the least stable places in our chart. It's where we're very vulnerable, and it's always moving and trying to find something to solidify it, to lean against. And in its own sign, it's leaning against itself. It's like, I'm safe here. I can just feel my feelings. I'm allowed to just outpour, what's going on for me. And um, that's enough. That's okay. That's all I have to do is just be vulnerable and be with myself. And so it's really beautiful moment when the moon is there. And the sun also reflects some very strong light in this place. It's not our most powerful place. It's where we get our power from our feeling nature, from our capacity to love like a mother. It's the power of the mother. But with Venus and Mercury, like I said, the energy can get a little murky, especially with that Mars drishti. Mars is really trying to just strengthen itself over there in Aries, and it's sending this message to us on our relational planets that, our own path is like more important in some ways, but at the same time, we're kind of clinging and reaching without the clearest communication. So there's a lot to go through here in this new moon. And, Saturn's retrograde cycle is no doubt slowing us down in various ways. If you want to know how all of these things affect you personally. So I did a breakdown just for Saturn retrograde for all 12 signs, which if you saw my Saturn retrograde video, you see the different ways you can get that either through my email list or my Patreon group. But in my Patreon group, I do these weekly transit reports, and Mercury and Venus's change of signs and what that means for you for the next few weeks is a part of this week's weekly star report. So you can get the star report at www.patreon.com, Radha Home Astrology, or you can go to radhahomeastrology.com. There's a link to my Patreon there, and you can sign up for my email list and find out how Saturn retrograde is affecting you. Because all of these things affect us really differently depending on what house it is for you. For some people, if Cancer is your rising sign, this is a new moon cycle in your 12th house. You're activating on all this loss and disappointment. But the planets, including your ruler, are moving into your first house right away. So it's that link, that bridge from like the unseen parts of yourself, the hidden parts of yourself, into being more embodied. And that's, what brings you disappointment, into how you can do something about it yourself. For each of us, it's going to be a different bridge, a different link from one place to another. And it's really important to see what that is if you really want to understand how this works. And that's why I call my group Cosmically Aligned, because ultimately that's the point of understanding these things, is to really be in alignment and understand how the stars aren't just up there and the planets, this crazy map up in the sky that we're looking to see what's going to happen to us. They're imprinted upon us at birth, and in transit, they affect us. They're called grahas. It's this gravitational energy that pulls us. And so when we know how it's activating us in our lives, in our body, in our being, then we have a relationship with it where the stars are written in us. They're not in the sky. And so it's very empowering. I hope this is helpful. Blessed new moon to you all, and I will see you soon. Namaste.